So hello and a big welcome back to the Resources Conservation and Recycling webinar program. My name is Mitchell Jones. I'm the Outreach Editor at Resources Conservation and Recycling, and it's a pleasure to have you all with us today. We're joined today by Ehsan. We're very fortunate to have him with us today. A big welcome to him. Before we kick things off, I'm just going to provide a few informal notes about the program. So this is the English language version of the Resources Conservation and Recycling webinar program. We run this program every second Thursday, normally, at 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific time. We also have a Chinese language version of the program, so if you have Chinese language skills, be sure to check that out. Now, this program, it essentially has the same scope as the journal, and we try to run a very balanced program, meaning that we try to provide equal weighting for the different scope elements, meaning that you could really see a program in any given week on any aspect of the scope of the journal, which is quite extensive, actually. The only thing that we ask is that the presenters please provide some context and background, some accessibility for the audience, so that we can also cater to a broader audience who may like to learn something from the program, but may not necessarily be as well versed in the topic as some of the other audience members or the speaker. So we ask for a minimization of jargon, field-specific terminology, and for some basic fundamental introductory elements to the presentation beyond the more detailed elements of the study. Registration for this program is necessary. You can find the registration links circulated in the Resources Conservation and Recycling newsletter at the end of each month. You can also find them on the social media pages. So if you visit our LinkedIn, our Facebook, our X page, you will find the links to our program there as well. Or you can also find them on the official Elsevier Journal homepage for Resources Conservation and Recycling. If you visit the About tab, you will find the webinar calendar there. And in that webinar calendar, you will find all of the upcoming speakers, in addition to all of the previous speakers with links to their archived content. So all of our content is archived to YouTube. You can also visit YouTube directly, youtube.com/@RCR journal. You can find all of the previous webinars archived there. You can also live stream the event there. So if you prefer to watch it without registration, so not in the Zoom environment, the only difference is you won't be able to ask questions, but you can still watch it on the YouTube homepage, for our homepage, that is youtube.com/@RCR journal. You can find the live feed there also. The final point is, we do this program for you, for our scientific community. We want this to be valuable to you. We want you to get something out of this program. And what that means is that we're very flexible. We're very willing to make this program, mold this program to whatever you want it to be. So if you have feedback, if you have criticism, if you have ideas for improvement or things that we're doing well, please share them with us. A survey will open at the end of the session today, as it does every time. You have the opportunity there to provide your feedback as multiple choice questions, just 8 or so, won't take you more than 1 to 2 minutes to fill out. Or if you prefer, there's also some optional detailed comments there that you could leave as well. Very good. Okay, so I'm going to now bring up the actual formal program for today. So we've had our welcome address. I'm going to provide a brief introduction to the journal, a more official introduction to the journal, followed by the introduction for our speaker today, Ehsan, and then a few notes on housekeeping. Following that, we'll have our presentation from Ehsan. He's indicated that he would like to give you a little bit extra today. So he might use a little bit more than 20 minutes. We don't really mind about the time. We'll see how we go. Whatever time he needs, I'm sure it will be interesting. Then we have question time. Again, we usually allow 10 minutes or so, but we're going to answer every question that you have unless we really go over. And then the information on the next event and the closing remarks for today. So hopefully you're all familiar with the journal. We're interested in everything resources, conservation, and recycling. I have here the specific scope elements systems-wide strategies, technological, economic, institutional, and policy focus, resource management practices, conservation, recycling, and resource substitution, resource productivity improvement, restructuring of production and consumption profiles, and transformation of industry. If you have any top quality research, we want to see it. Submit it to Elseviers, Resources Conservation and Recycling. Ehsan has just told me that all three of the papers that he's covering today in his webinar are all published in Resources Conservation and Recycling. Very nice indeed. Okay, so housekeeping for today. If we could please have all communication in English. We're very blessed with a very diverse audience, with a very beautiful range of different languages, but we do need to be able to understand each other. If we could have communication, please, in English. There are closed captions are available. Right now, they are running in Zoom. They are also available and running in YouTube. If you, perhaps English is not your first language and you would maybe benefit from some closed captions, they are there for you. Feel very free to use them. Or, if you're on the train watching your webinar without audio, also feel very free to use them. They're there for you. If you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A over the course of the presentation or at the end of the presentation. Also, don't forget, we are more than happy for a more interactive environment. If you would like to talk directly to Ehsan, if you'd like to have a chat with your microphone, with your video, we'd be more than happy to facilitate that. You just need to indicate interest in doing that by raising your hand in the, you have a raised hand reaction in your toolbar. So just raise your hand there, and we'll be more than happy to bring you onto the floor to talk to Ehsan. So my pleasure today to introduce Ehsan VAHIDI from the University of Nevada, Reno in the USA. He's going to be speaking with us on the topic of unlocking sustainable lithium, life cycle insights into direct extraction methods. Dr. Ehsan VAHIDI is an assistant professor of mining and metallurgical engineering and the Butler Endowed Professor at the University of Nevada at Reno. His research centers on the environmental and techno-economic assessment of resource production and recovery, particularly lithium and other energy-critical materials. Dr. VAHIDI earned his PhD from Purdue University, where he evaluated the sustainability of critical materials for the U.S. Department of Energy's Critical Materials Institute. He has authored numerous publications on life cycle assessment of emerging technologies and collaborates widely with national laboratories and the mining industry in the United States. His work supports a transition towards clean energy systems through evidence-based evaluation of resource supply chains. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Ehsan. I'm going to now stop sharing my screen so that you're able to share yours.
Thank you, Mitch, for the nice introduction. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you again for inviting me for this webinar. Today, I would like to talk about sustainable lithium extraction, mostly in the United States. I'm Ehsan VAHIDI. I'm assistant professor and Butler Endowed Professor at the University of Nevada, Reno, in the Department of Mining and Metallurgical Engineering. So, okay, this is the question that I'm asked every time that we talk about mining. So it's a kind of debate. Lots of people, they ask me, how about just we do recycling instead of mining? So we have a couple of facts here. Over 10 million EVs are on the road globally by now. 140 million EV will be on the road globally by 2030. By 2040, 58% of all cars sold globally will be electric vehicles. 11 million metric tons of lithium batteries are expected to reach end-of-life service between now and 2030. Now, we are just recycling 5% of the batteries. So by 2050, battery recycling could supply 22 to 27% of the total lithium demand in the world. So mining will go nowhere. So we need mining to answer the demand for lithium industry. Okay, when we talk about lithium resources in the world, so this is the kind of map on the right-hand side. You will see different resources of lithium in South America, in Chile, in Peru, Argentina, in Bolivia. We have brine resources. So probably you've heard the brine resources. I'll talk about brine resources, and we can produce lithium from brine resources. In Australia and China, we have hard rock resources, spodumene, pegmatite resources, and we can produce lithium from those resources as well. So right now in the market, so all of the lithium are it's produced from these two resources. In the US, we have another new resources. We have clay minerals or sedimentary rock. We have different names for it based on the geologists and different mining companies. So in the US, we have clay minerals. So if you look at on the left-hand side, picture in Nevada, we have a lot of different projects. So Nevada is the center of lithium in the US. If you have heard about Thacker Pass project in northern Nevada or McDermott caldera, so this is one of the largest resources of lithium in the world. And the concentration of lithium is around 3,000 ppm. In central Nevada, close to the city Tonopah, we have a lot of different resources, concentration ranging from 600 ppm to 2,500 ppm. So right now, so we have 40 different major mining projects are in the pipeline of permitting process and also approval in Nevada, just in Nevada. So that's why I'm saying Nevada will be a big player in the near future. Okay, so I talked a little bit about different resources. On the right-hand side, you will see primary resources versus secondary resources. In mining, we call primary resources due to the resources that we produce, for example, lithium from natural resources. In the secondary process, the secondary resources, we can produce commodities from recycled, from spent or waste materials. So in this talk, I would like to focus more on the primary resources. About the lithium demand forecast, you will see the increasing demand from 2025 to 2032 based on the fast markets forecast. And majority of this increase is based on increasing demand in electric vehicles. If we look at the profiles of different countries producing lithium, Australia right now is the major producer of lithium in the world, following by Chile and China. And if we look at the sources of lithium around the world, right now, brine is the major source for lithium right now in the world, mostly coming from Chile and Argentina. And then we have hard rock, mostly from Australia and China. Okay, about the price of lithium. Price of lithium experienced kind of a skyrocketed price, increase in 2021. And the price reached to around $70,000 per ton of lithium. After that, we saw a kind of decreasing trend in lithium price. Right now, it's around $10,000 per ton of lithium. These are three different scenarios. If we look at the very optimistic scenario, P10, if you look at the purple line, we'll see by 2030, the price of lithium somewhere around $60,000 per ton of lithium. In the pessimistic scenario, if you look at P90 in the green line, so the price would be around $15,000 per ton of lithium, and realistic scenario is around $30,000 per ton of lithium. If I want to give you an estimate about what you can expect from Nevadan industry in terms of clay minerals, their production cost is around somewhere $7,000 to $10,000 per ton of lithium. So there is a kind of good margin in terms of the benefit for those companies. That's why we see 40 different projects in Nevada. Okay, now the only production facility in the US is located in Nevada, close to Tonopah. We call it Silver Peak Project. And it's producing around 1% of the total world's demand. Very small facility. But as I mentioned, in the future, we'll have major production facilities in northern Nevada and also in central Nevada. So I would like to start talking about different processes around the world. The first process, I talked about hard rock spodumene deposits in Australia and China. So it's very similar to what we have in mining of other base metals like copper or like zinc. So in this process, we have drilling, we have blasting, we have grinding and crushing, and also we have flotation, mineral processing, leaching process, hydrometallurgical process, and at the end of the process, we can produce lithium carbonate equivalent, LCE. So in this specific process, we have flotation in Australia, and after concentration, the ore with 7% concentration will be shipped from Australia to China for further processing. In China, they use high temperature calcination to change the phase from alpha spodumene to beta spodumene, and then using leaching at high temperature and using sodium carbonate, soda ash, they will produce lithium carbonate. I modeled the whole facility based on the chemical and also the energy consumption in the process. And this is kind of, the, contribution graph. If you look at this graph on the second bar chart, this is global warming potential, CO2 emission. You will see the majority of the CO2 emission comes from coal. So there's no surprise. So majority of electricity energy consumption in Australia and China is supplied by coal power plant. So that is the major contributor to the process. Coal, if we remove coal from the process, they see a huge benefit in terms of the CO2 emission in the process. The second process is conventional brine process. This is what we can see in central Nevada in Silver Peak, also in Atacama in Chile, or Cachari in Argentina. There are a couple of different projects working on the brine processing. So the basics of the process is pumping brine from underground, pump them into the evaporation ponds. It takes around 9 to 18 months for evaporation. So as you can expect, there will be no energy consumption for concentration. We get help from sunlight. So using sunlight, we evaporate water, we concentrate the brine, and then after some impurity removal stages, using a soda ash again, we can precipitate lithium as lithium carbonate equivalent. And you can see again chemicals and energy in the process. And when we modeled that process, the major contributor is soda ash. This is the chemical that we use for precipitation of lithium from the solution and the production of lithium carbonate equivalent. The third process, so this is what I'm talking a little bit more. It's in Nevada, and it's a kind of new process. I'll talk a little bit about the status of the project in Nevada. So sedimentary rocks or clay minerals, we have them mostly in northern Nevada. So after some drilling and blasting, we have just primary crushing. Dark clays are very soft. So there will be no need for grinding. So it will be kind of huge help for us because we can save in terms of energy for grinders. And after a leaching process using sulfuric acid, I'll talk about it. That's why it's important. Using sulfuric acid, we can remove other impurities like magnesium, calcium, and boron. And using soda ash, we can produce lithium carbonate equivalent. And this is the kind of schematic of the flow diagram: drilling, blasting, and then loading and hauling. We just have one crusher. We don't have any multiple crushers or any kind of grinders. That's the highlight of the process because the ore is really brittle. And then after that, we have leaching process using sulfuric acid. The highlight of the process is emission of direct emission of CO2 in this stage. The ore in the clay minerals is heavily carbonated. When you use sulfuric acid for leaching, actually you are releasing CO2 to the environment in the leaching stage. I'll talk about the impact. After the leaching, we have impurity removal, and then filtration will send the filter cakes to the waste to the tailing process, and also after the final impurity removal stage, we can have lithium carbonate equivalent. When we have sulfuric acid consumption in this process, we can produce sulfuric acid on site. So this is the approach that most of the lithium production facilities is choosing right now in Nevada. Most of them are in the middle of nowhere. So they prefer to import molten sulfur instead of sulfuric acid because of different reasons. So if you want to transport sulfuric acid, you have to also think about the safety issues of sulfuric acid. So this is another problem. So they import molten sulfur and they produce sulfuric acid on site. The impact of sulfuric acid, the kilogram of CO2 per million tons of sulfuric acid, is way less than what they can expect from the market. If they buy it from the market, it will be very high impact compared to what they are using in different processes on site. So one advantage is production of sulfuric acid on site. The side advantage of that is when you produce sulfuric acid, it's a kind of exothermic reaction. 26.7 megajoule per kilogram of sulfur when you produce sulfuric acid out of molten sulfur. So they can capture that heat and they can generate electricity. This is the major highlight of the process in Nevada. So most of the lithium production facilities in Nevada are off-grid. So they produce their own electricity using their sulfuric acid plants. So if you look at the electricity generation impact, it's 81 kilograms CO2 per megawatt hour versus 217 kilograms if they import it from electricity grid. It's kind of huge saving that they can get using manufacturing the production of sulfuric acid on site. Okay, this is the contribution graph for CO2 emission. If you look at on the second bar chart on the left-hand side, global warming, you can see the leaching stage is the major stage in terms of the CO2 emission. I talked about the reason. The main reason is releasing CO2 from the ore. When you leach the ore using sulfuric acid, you are releasing the CO2. Besides that, you are consuming sulfuric acid. You are producing a lot of CO2 in that process as well in terms of sulfuric acid consumption. So if you compare those three facilities, Chilean brine versus Australian hard rock, production of concentrates sending into China for refining, and also in the third process, Nevada sedimentary or clay deposits, I compared them in terms of global warming and water consumption. You will see that in terms of global warming, Chilean brine is the best scenario, is the best case, because we don't have that much energy consumption in the concentration. You will use sunlight, so you don't use that much electricity for concentration. At the same time, Australian spodumene, because you use coal for generation of power, so you will have higher environmental impact. And then we have Nevada sedimentary, almost 21 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of lithium carbonate. And I can say that 80% of the CO2 comes from direct emission of CO2 from carbonated ore. So if the companies can capture the CO2 in the leaching stage, they can save around 80% of this number. So there will be kind of huge potential for different companies to do carbon capture in this system. In terms of water consumption, so I talked about it. So we evaporate water in brine, in conventional brine system. It's huge water consumption. It's not a good process, especially in Nevada. We have kind of, dry lands in Nevada. Water is precious. So we prefer to use other methods in Nevada. And you can see the water consumption in Nevada compared to conventional brine. So it's around less than half of water consumption we have in sedimentary rock deposit system. Okay, so I talked about three different processes. I talked about conventional brine, but conventional brine, as I mentioned, relies on open air evaporation ponds. there are a couple of disadvantages. The first one is slow process, slow concentration process, 9 to 18 months. The second disadvantage is huge amount of water to be wasted in the process. 300 to 460 cubic meter, depending on the location. I talked about Atacama in Chile. You can think about, Nevada or Argentina. A huge amount of water will be wasted. And also at the same time, I showed the lands. So we have a lot of different lands for concentrating in different evaporation ponds. Land use is another issue. So in recent years, we have seen a lot of different, solutions in terms of direct lithium extraction. So I would like to talk about direct lithium extraction here. So this is the results, published in one of my papers. I'll share the title of my papers at the end of the presentation. So it's about direct lithium extraction. It's based on a power plant, a pilot plant facility in central Nevada. It's based on the membrane processing and also using electricity to run those, compact system. We start with the brine concentration around 160 ppm, and using some pre-treatment, using some heating process, some chemicals, we increase the concentration to 1600 ppm. And after some brine polishing, removing some impurities, we can increase the concentration from 1600 to 25,000 ppm. And after 25,000 ppm, we can use soda ash to precipitate lithium, and we can produce lithium carbonate in a very compacted system. So this is the table that you can find in one of my papers. I modeled DLE processing, the whole process from drilling and from pumping of brine into the production of lithium carbonate equivalent in the direct lithium extraction. And I compared them with other processing facilities in Chile, in Argentina, also in Australia and China. So what you can see in DLE, if you look at again on the second bar chart in global warming impact, brine pre-treatment, is the one of the stages with the highest impact. The reason is, heating. So we need electricity for heating. So, and that electricity has huge impact. Again, most of the lithium assets in Nevada are in the middle of nowhere. So we need generation of electricity using diesel generator or using other, systems like solar panels. So we have huge impact in terms of electricity generation. It's one of the major limitations for lithium production in Nevada. And if you look at the contribution of energy versus chemicals, 65% of impact is coming from energy consumption. So no surprise, because we use a lot of electricity, versus 35% coming from chemical consumption in the process. If you look at the comparative graph here, on the left-hand side, DLE, then Atacama, conventional brine system, Cauchari conventional brine system, hard rock in Australia and China, and sedimentary rock deposit in Nevada, you will see the difference between the CO2 emission, total CO2 emission. DLE still is higher impact compared to conventional brine system in terms of the CO2 emission, but I'll talk about other advantages of DLE compared to conventional brines. But in terms of comparison with hard rock and sedimentary rock, it has better environmental performance for CO2 emission. So again, if you look at DLE process on the left-hand side graph, you will see DLE using different electricity resource. So if we use diesel generator, if we use grid, and also if we use solar panels, we can decrease the impact of energy in DLE processing. So I investigated different sources of electricity. You can see that the energy impact in DLE can decrease from 9.2 kilograms to 2.3 kilograms per kilogram of lithium carbonate if we switch from diesel generator to solar panels. So we can do that. And on the right-hand side graph, we can see different contribution in terms of concentrating stages versus lithium carbonate equivalent production stages. So I talked a little bit about, land use. It's about, this graph is about direct and indirect land use. When we talk about direct land use, we are working on, for example, if we have open pits, if we have any kind of, production facilities, these are direct land use, that you use those lands on site to produce lithium. Indirect land use refers to those lands that we use in terms of, for example, other, for example, chemicals. If you use electricity, those electricity, consumption, those electricity was generated from a coal power plant or any power plant close by. So we explore those, land use at the power plant or any kind of manufacturing plant for sulfuric acid or any kind of chemicals. If you look at, for example, brine, conventional brine, Atacama and Cauchari, those two middle icebergs, you will have a lot of, big impact from direct land use because you have evaporation ponds. You use a lot of lands. At the same time, you have less indirect land because you don't have that much energy consumption in the system. You don't import that much electricity to the system. On the opposite side, so DLE, so you don't have that much direct land. So everything is in compact containers. You don't have that much land used directly in the system, but you will use a lot of electricity coming from power plants. You will use a lot of chemicals coming from different manufacturing facilities, and you have significant indirect land use. In hard rock system, it's almost equal direct and indirect land use. And also in my paper, I explored the impact of different scenarios if we generate electricity from different resources, if we use from grid, if we use electricity from solar panels or from diesel generator, what we have in terms of the direct and indirect land use. So another advantage of DLE is water consumption. If you look at here in terms of evaporated water, in DLE, based on the results we got from those pilot plant facilities in DLE, for DLE in Nevada, they recycle almost 99% of the water. So they recycle water, so we don't have that much water waste in the system. So that is the main advantage of DLE, which is really, really important for Nevada. As I said, we are in dry lands, we need water. Water is a precious, material for us. So in terms of, conventional brine system, we have some important, parameters in terms of water consumption in the system. And DLE is one of the advantages of DLE is recycling of water in the system. Okay, this is a kind of, summary graph. I showed different, production facilities. For example, in the US, we have sedimentary rock and also DLE. We have conventional brine in Chile and Argentina, and we have spodumene hard rock processing in Australia and China. In terms of climate change and also in terms of water consumption, for sure, we have some disadvantages and also advantages in terms of land use in the system. And it's important to consider all different, parameters. So based on my talk, based on what I presented, this is a kind of trade-off issue. So sometimes, for example, in conventional brine, you have less CO2 emission. At the same time, you have high water consumption, also high land use. So in sedimentary rock, we have a kind of average water consumption and also CO2 emission compared to hard rock facilities. So it's a kind of trade-off between different production facilities. But what I would like to highlight here is that in terms of the sedimentary rock, this is the major resource in Nevada. There is huge potential in terms of improvement in the system. So we can reduce that climate change impact, the CO2 impact, from 18.2 to around 4 if we install some good carbon capture storage facilities close to the leaching process. So we have huge potential in terms of reducing environmental impact in the system for sedimentary rock deposit processing system. Okay, we did not stop in the processing of different, the modeling of different, systems. Also focused in one of my papers on the separation process. We have different types of DLEs. So whatever we modeled was based on one processing plant, the pilot plant that we got the results from a company. So, but we started to compare different production systems in DLE's processing system. So one of the methods is solvent extraction. In solvent extraction, we use organic solvent to selectively separate lithium from the brine. And then after extraction phase, in the stripping phase, using some acids, we can reverse the reaction to just separate lithium from the organic phase. And then we can separate lithium and concentrate lithium in the system. And using some soda ash, we can precipitate lithium carbonate equivalent. This is one of the methods. In the solvent extraction process, the energy and utility is allocated to mixing, heating, pumping, and filtration. And in materials and chemicals, we also need to consider some organic acid makeup. So because in the solvent extraction, we always lose a little bit, organic acid in the solvent extraction, and we need to add some organic acid as a fresh organic acid. And also, we need water and chemical reagent, also soda ash. The second process that we investigated, so again, in this study, we focused just on the separation process. We excluded drilling process. We excluded pumping process. We just focused on, we assumed that we have the brine. We would like to separate lithium from brine. What would be the scenario if we use different, the methods for DLE, for direct lithium extraction? The second process is adsorption, using some adsorbent. We synthesize those adsorbent. We can separate lithium selectively from the brine, and using soda ash, we can separate lithium carbonate equivalent. So mixing, heating, pumping, filtration in terms of the energy and utility, and materials and chemicals, adsorbent synthesis, desorption reagent, also soda ash are the chemicals. The third process is nanofiltration. In nanofiltration, we use some pumps in order to pump the brine inside of some filtration process. Using some kind of stages of filtration, we can separate sodium and potassium first, and then calcium, magnesium, using some membranes, divalent or monovalent membranes, and then we can produce lithium carbonate equivalent. And again, we have filters, we have membranes, we have soda ash in the materials and chemicals. And the last process is electrodialysis. Here is a little bit different. The driving force here is electricity, not pumping system. We use a lot of electricity in terms of driving force. We can separate divalent ions from monovalent ions, and then we can separate lithium from magnesium and calcium, and then we can increase the concentration of lithium in the process, and then we can use soda ash to produce lithium carbonate equivalent. So this is what we have in terms of the comparison. If you look at, again, global warming, so you can see the electrodialysis has the highest environmental impact, has the highest contribution in terms of the CO2 emission. The best process would be nanofiltration. It has almost 20% of impact of electrodialysis. And then between nanofiltration and electrodialysis, we have adsorption and solvent extraction. And all the results are based on different papers that we found in the literature. And then we summarize and synthesize those results from the papers for DLE methods. Okay, and this is a kind of Sankey diagram. On the left-hand side, you will see the impact of reagent versus the impact of energy. Again, in the middle, you will see 4 different processes, methods. You will see the electrodialysis has the highest contribution to energy impact because we use a lot of electricity for production of lithium carbonate. On the left-hand side, we have impurity removal stage versus lithium carbonate production stage, though the contribution of each stage in terms of the CO2 emission. And as the conclusion, I can mention that DLE is a new process. It has a lot of potential, and it's a new process. We don't see it right now at the large industrial scale. So all of the processing are at the pilot scale. They are trying to scale up to industrial scale. Still needs more research, more modification and advancement. In terms of the clay minerals, the major resource in Nevada, I can say that also we have huge potential in terms of advancement. It's a new process right now. Most of the facilities, including Lithium Americas in northern Nevada in Tucker Pass, they start production in 2027. It's interesting to say that 40% of the share of this company is for GM, General Motors. And the first 10 years of production will go directly to General Motors. So it's the highlight of this project for Nevada. And for now, they just they would like to start the process as soon as possible in 2027. But for sure, there will be potential for improvement in terms of CO2 emission reduction, also efficiency advancement. Water consumption is another issue in Nevada. All of those 40 different mining projects are waiting for permitting process, and one of the categories in permitting process is water rights in Nevada. So if a process is proposed in terms of production with less water consumption, that would be easier for all different companies to get permit faster and also more effectively. So these are 3 papers that I used the results of these 3 papers in my presentation. I would be happy to share these papers with you if you contact me. This is my email address at University of Nevada, and I would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Ehsan. So interesting, I have to say. And you also managed with the time very nicely, so that was also a bonus. So I will open the floor to questions if people have any questions. I actually see there are already 2 in the chat. Probably will give people a few more minutes just to drop any questions that they want in the chat, or the opportunity to raise their hand. I will kick things off with a couple of questions of my own. And I kind of like, you've gone very, I mean, obviously this is a study that's quite geographically localized and also to different methods and things like that. But in a moment, I really want to go a bit more big picture with our thinking, or at least widen the scope slightly. But first, I wanted to ask you, so you said a couple of times, you talked a little bit about the challenges that you face in Nevada with this kind of issue. And I understand, obviously, that you work in Nevada, but the first question that came into my mind was, is Nevada really the right place to do this? If this is the situation in Nevada, I was curious whether there are other places in the United States that it might be, the picture might look a little different. That was my first thought.
Sure. Nevada is the friendliest state in terms of mining in the U.S. The reason is that when we talk about mining, the major problem is not most of the time the technology, is permitting process. So the impact of mining on the local community. One of the main reasons that Nevada is really attractive for mining is that in most areas, in most counties in Nevada, we have very low population. So you don't see the same situation, for example, in North Carolina. We have lithium resources in North Carolina, but I do not expect any kind of permit to be issued in North Carolina, because most of the assets are really close to farms, to really close to local communities, and that is the main problem in terms of mining. When we talk about mining, so the most challenging part, if you go to different mining conference, the most challenging part is permitting process. And that is why Nevada is so attractive. Besides Nevada, probably the second state would be Arizona in the US. So we have those 2 states as the most attractive states for mining, a processing system. And that's why, I call them Nevada the next capital for lithium. We have a lot of different lithium assets in central Nevada, close to Tonopah. And the name of the country, if you look at it, Esmeralda County, this is the second county in terms of lowest population in the whole US among 3,000 counties. So that is the advantage of those counties for mining in Nevada. So the permitting process is so easy compared to other states.
So isn't that interesting then? It can, like in many, many aspects of science, it can be that the answer that would seem to be the most logical, scientifically speaking, is the least practical from a real world perspective for a
Yes.
multitude of different reasons. That's very interesting. So my next question was, where do you see, so okay, you talked about a range of different countries and a range of different techniques, and obviously we have an increasing lithium demand, and it will only continue to increase. Where do you see the greatest opportunities for lithium generation and supply globally?
So right now we have hard rock resources in Australia and China, also brine resources in South America. Probably the next, big move would be other resources like in the U.S. U.S. Department of Energy invested a lot in the last 4 years on production of lithium domestically. So from clay minerals, from brine resources. So this would be probably the next big move for most of the countries. I know that in China also they have clay minerals, the same clay minerals we have in the U.S. So what we don't see right now that much the facilities going to the market, right now. Another after the clay minerals, another potential is for DLE, direct lithium extraction. So for those countries that they have brine in the system, using DLE with less environmental impact, with less, if they can secure electricity very well, everything else would be really, really, good in terms of the CO2 emission, in terms of the water consumption. And if they, for example, if they use electricity, if they generate electricity from renewable resources, we'll have a very nice environmental profile for DLE. So, and that's kind of another, future potential for lithium extraction around the world. And I can see that, if we can generate we can have a good, processing in terms of water consumption, electricity generation, this process can produce lithium even in Chile and Argentina. And that is a great help for those countries in order to improve their environmental performance.
But I thought that the Chilean one was only around 3, wasn't it?
It's just conventional brine right now using evaporation pond at this stage. So
Okay.
right now, in terms of DLE, I don't see that much industrial scale DLE process. So whatever we have in the US are mostly based on pilot system, and they would like to scale up from pilot to the larger scale facilities.
I see. So maybe that also ties into, I mean, I noticed you said, so I'm actually Australian, so it was quite interesting for me to see the relevance of Australia to lithium that you mentioned. But I noticed that you said that it was, the environmental footprint was 10 times higher in Australia than it was with the others. And I was just wondering if Australia was to change its energy mix, how radically this footprint could change.
The process in Australia is not a complete process. So they mine lithium, they concentrate lithium up to 7% lithium, and they ship it to China for further refinement. So whatever they do in Australia in terms of flotation, in terms of the initial processing system, is based on coal power plant, mostly based on coal power. For sure, if they can reduce the CO2 emission in the grid, in the electricity mix, they can reduce the environmental impact from the first part of the process. But the second part is in China. China should also reduce the CO2 emission in the power plant in order to reduce the whole emission in the hard rock system.
Very nice. Now, we usually do a mix of sort of more specific questions and sort of high level questions. I am going to switch to the chat for the specific questions, and then we'll go to the high level because we already have 5. So the first one from Hamilton, why sulfuric acid produced inside has the lowest environmental impact. The majority of sulfuric acid is produced in the same way and generates electricity as well. What is the difference? Is it only because electricity is used in the lithium plant?
So part of it is because of the electricity that we can use it again for the sulfuric acid production. But the other part is that we will reduce the transportation significantly in the system. So when you transport molten sulfur versus transporting sulfuric acid in big tanks, and also in terms of the safety, this is another consideration in terms of environmental impact. You are reducing environmental impact in transportation as well, because when we talk about buying sulfuric acid from the market, we also need to consider transportation, for example, from Vancouver to Northern Nevada. If they want to purchase sulfuric acid or from San Francisco or Vancouver or any kind of major production facilities, they have to also consider the transportation system as well. So that is the major challenge here. So when we use molten sulfur, we will save in terms of the CO2 emission in the total sulfuric acid impact.
We have another question also from Hamilton, how nanofiltration can produce pure lithium solution streams.
Okay, so when we have brine system, we have different ions in terms of monovalent the ions, and also divalent ions. Using some membranes and also using monovalent divalent membrane, we can separate magnesium, calcium, sodium, and potassium from those kind of brines, and we can increase the concentration of lithium in the system, in the brine system. And after all of these membranes, we can use soda ash in order to selectively precipitate lithium in the system, and in terms of lithium carbonate. If you are interested, I can refer to one of the papers that we used in terms of the nanofiltration, and we modeled the whole process based on those papers in the literature. And as I mentioned, the second part of my talk was mostly based on the literature. The first part of my talk was based on the results that I got directly from mining companies. The second part of my talk was based on the results that we synthesized, we generated from literature. So I can just send you those papers that we use for nanofiltration.
We have another question here. Won't DLE, brackets solar, require land usage for solar panel installation, or it might not be as significant as brine ponds?
Yes, it requires land use, but the difference I showed in my slides, direct land use and indirect land use. When we use solar panel, we increase direct land use while we reduce indirect land use. So that was the difference. So I showed in my slides in the iceberg chart, you will see the numbers. Once you use solar panels, you are reducing indirect land use because you are generating electricity on site. And when you have, for example, DLE processing system, you will have a large land for drilling and pumping. So you can use that land for solar panel installation. That is the kind of just major justification for the company that we worked with them in terms of the exploration of solar panel installation in the system. Yes, we increase direct land use while we decrease indirect land use.
Very nice. We have another question here. Firstly, I wanted to thank you immensely for the opportunity to participate in this webinar and for the excellent presentation today. Very clear and profound. I have two questions. Have you also evaluated the re-evaluation of the residues produced in each technology? Have you also been working on social LCA of these product systems?
If you mean about re-evaluation, about for example, using that waste in another process, there are a lot of different research right now, especially for clay minerals. It's a kind of kind of new line of research. One of the things that I can say, when you work on sedimentary rock or clay minerals, you have a lot of magnesium and calcium sulfates. So I can say that, for example, when you leach lithium, you have 3,000 ppm lithium. At the same time, you have 80,000 ppm of magnesium. So you can imagine how much magnesium sulfate will be produced when you are producing lithium carbonate. So right now, this is the waste of the process, because the companies cannot find that much end users for those magnesium sulfate or calcium sulfate. If there is any technology at the end of the process that can use these materials as the input to another process or kind of saleable product, I think that can be a very kind of interesting kind of topic for those mining companies. And mining companies will buy those ideas from you if you have good kind of solution for those waste in the process. And in terms of social LCA, not yet. So it's a very interesting area. I talked about the permitting process, about the communities. So it's a very kind of interesting area. I'm interested. I have not started social LCA right now, but this is on my radar. So in the future, it's a really interesting. If you look at Nevadan, industry, they are all located in very poor communities. It's a really interesting topic if you investigate the impact of those mining facilities on those communities in terms of economic and also social impacts of those communities. So that's a very nice topic for the future.
Very nice. We have another question here. If you have perspectives on circular lithium economy.
For if you mean about circular lithium economy, I can talk about what we have in Nevada. So I mentioned about Nevada as the hub for lithium. We have Tesla and Panasonic in Reno, in Nevada. So as a cell manufacturer, we have a lot of lithium mining companies. I talked about them. Also, we have a lot of recycling companies. Probably you have heard about Redwood Materials, American Battery Technology. These are recycling companies based in Nevada. So that's really, really important that whatever we produce in terms of lithium can be recycled at the downstream. So here, probably in Nevada or somewhere else. But another thing is about, as I mentioned in the previous question, about the residues. If we talk about some byproducts, some of the mining facilities here, they have some other nice byproducts in terms of recycling from waste materials. So one of the mining assets, the Rhyolite Ridge in central Nevada, they have boron inside of the facility, inside of the asset. So another nice aspects of their work is producing boric acid while they produce lithium in the process. So they try to produce as much as possible saleable products. So they try to recycle all different waste materials. Another recycling aspect I talked about, DLE, water recycling process. So the good thing about DLE is that when they separate lithium from the brine system, they return that depleted lithium brine from lithium, they send it again to the wells. So we don't have that much lost in terms of water. So that is kind of different ongoing research in different processes in terms of circular lithium industry.
Very nice. And then the next question, what is the most significant technical challenge for scaling up nanofiltration?
For scaling up nanofiltration, so for sure we use some membranes, fouling membranes. So this is another problem. So the membranes that can work for a long time is one of the challenges, I think. that's the kind of operational expense, OpEx, in the system is one of the major problems. We don't know if nanofiltration can work non-stop for 6 months or not. No, we don't know anything about it. So everything that we modeled was based on, the literature was based on lab process. So we don't know anything about, if we scale up the process into bench and then pilot and then factory scale, how much OpEx we have in terms of maintenance in the system. That is the major problem in terms of nanofiltration compared to the conventional mining process. For example, when we talk about solvent extraction, we already use solvent extraction in other base metal production facilities. We already have it in Arizona for production of copper in the system with different organic phase. So we have less complexity, less unknown parameters for solvent extraction, for example, compared to nanofiltration. That is the major challenge for those new processes like nanofiltration, electrodialysis, or even adsorption.
A comment from Sueli. Thank you so much. She was asking the previous question, or he. I'm not going to assume the gender. The next question, what is purity of end LICE? What will it need further purification before we use it for EVs and other technologies?
Yes, it needs further purification to be reached to the battery grade materials. So it's a kind of not battery grade. So the purity is just at the industry grade. Is that the battery grade? So yes, if in the some facilities they use that LCE and convert it to the battery grade lithium carbonate. So another thing is, at the same time, so it's another interesting point that some battery manufacturing systems are based on lithium hydroxide instead of lithium carbonate. Interesting point about that is that most of the mining companies are not really interested in production of lithium hydroxide. Lithium hydroxide is more expensive for sure. It's they have more return, but the problem is that they have shorter shelf life. Lithium hydroxide. If they produce lithium hydroxide, they have to use it as soon as possible in the cell manufacturing process. Otherwise, it will be converted again to lithium carbonate. Whatever they spent in terms of production of lithium hydroxide from lithium carbonate, the reaction will be reversed in the system. So the short shelf life is the problem with lithium hydroxide. And that's one of the major issues. So if you also look at the recycling industry, they have also the same issue with the lithium hydroxide versus lithium carbonate.
The next question from Rohama. Good efforts. Can this then be waste to energy, hence proving your work feasible up to several cycles?
I'm not sure about the waste in terms of this process to energy. So yes, if you mean in terms of waste to energy, in terms of using some, for example, urban waste in terms of production of electricity for lithium mining, yes, for sure. But the problem here is, I talked about it, most of the lithium facilities, lithium assets are in the middle of nowhere. So there's not that much in kind of, big cities around those facilities. And transportation will be another issue to those facilities. Another thing is I talked about magnesium sulfate or calcium sulfate. If we want to use them in the construction materials, this is another problem. We have to use those construction materials locally. So if you look at aggregate industry, if you look at construction industry, you will see these industry close to the big cities. So because the transportation is not really kind of beneficial to, for example, you transport aggregate from Reno to Los Angeles. No, it doesn't make sense. You have to have aggregate industry close to Los Angeles area. So this is another problem. If we want to use the urban waste, for example, in production of energy, that's one of the limitations, that we don't have that much large urban areas close to lithium industry.
We have a comment from Cal. Excellent presentation and Q&As. Thanks. Then we have the next question from Reza. Could combining multiple DLE methods, for example, nanofiltration plus solvent extraction, lead to better sustainability outcomes?
Yes, yes, this is ongoing research in many research groups. For example, we can combine nanofiltration with solvent extraction easily in order to, for example, separate, if we have we have challenges in terms of pure solvent extraction. First, we can use nanofiltration to separate some of the ions, and then we can focus on nanofiltration for the purification of lithium. Yes, for sure. This is a very interesting topic. I'm honestly working on that. So combining different technologies for a DLE process. And that's a kind of, I think one of the future directions in terms of DLE.
A comment from Reza. Thanks. It was a great presentation. Another question here. Great talk. Thanks a lot. What are the challenges for large-scale electrodialysis effort? Yes. Same as nanofiltration? Question mark.
Yes. Yes, one of the major problems with electrodialysis is the electricity consumption and also generation. So we need electricity for electrodialysis. At the same time, we need good membranes. So the membranes that can last for a couple of months. So these are the challenges in terms of the electrodialysis. And also another one is that all of these, electrodialysis and nanofiltration are good technologies right now at the lab scale. So we don't know if we scale up these processes at the bench or pilot, what we'll see in these technologies in terms of efficiency, in terms of sustainability, and also in terms of capital expense. So this is another problem. So for a lot of mining companies, they would like to see cheaper, processing system, and also they can start mining process with the lowest capital expense compared to other technologies. So if these are the kind of current efforts in order to reduce capex, reduce OPEX, increasing the efficiency, and also knowing a little bit more unknown parameters for a pilot scale system.
So Ehsan, we've had a lot of questions today, but I do still want to ask you. I had a few more that are some higher level questions. So what I might do is I'm just going to read you. I'm going to synthesize them together, and I'm just going to let you provide some fairly open, closing, high level remarks.
Sure.
So
Sure.
The higher level kind of aspects of this. So how long do you see lithium being the dominant material for battery technology? Do you see new minerals or new metals or emerging where you see, basically, where do you see battery technology going? How long is lithium going to be the dominant material for this? What are the core challenges, more broadly speaking, for a transition to a more electrified economy, both in terms of challenges for industry and also challenges for researchers? And what do you think needs to happen? So maybe you'd like to just provide a closing high-level statement about the future of lithium, the future of batteries, the future of electrification, the core challenges, what needs to happen, etc.
We have seen a couple of different technologies like sodium-ion batteries or any other type of technologies. In my view, I think in the lithium-ion industry, battery industry, for sure in the future, we'll see batteries with less cobalt and nickel, because these are the commodities that we have seen the risks in terms of the supply chain. In terms of nickel, we have seen the war between Russia and Ukraine that disrupted the supply chain of nickel in the industry. In terms of cobalt, we all have problems. Lots of companies have problem with supplying cobalt from Congo because of the the human rights issues and also child labor issues. So what I can see is that less development of batteries with less content of nickel and cobalt. So probably lithium will be there in terms of the technology. Yeah, for sure. If sodium-ion batteries come to market with good performance, they can be a kind of competitor. But for now, lithium is the major, player in this area. But, you've seen LFP batteries. So these are the new type of batteries with less cobalt and nickel in the, chemistry. So I see that, the industry will go that way. And if you also consider the price of commodities for lithium-ion batteries, lithium is still cheap. So I talked about the price of lithium. If you compare the price of lithium to nickel and cobalt, lithium is still a cheap, commodity for production of batteries. And with the production of more lithium in the future, I think the market will be more stable. It's not similar to, for example, rare earths, that we have a monopoly in the world. So we have South America, we have Australia and China, we have U.S., we have other countries coming to the market. So we don't see that much kind of disruption in terms of the supply chain for lithium. So what I'm saying is that lithium will be there, but for other commodities, probably we'll see kind of significant change in terms of the consumption, especially for nickel and cobalt.
And the core challenges and what needs to happen for researchers, research in this area, and for industry, core industry problems, core research problems in this area, and what needs to happen about them?
For core research, challenge, depending on the area of the challenge. So in the manufacturing, I mentioned manufacturing batteries with less nickel and cobalt. For recycling, it's about developing some methods that can accept all different types of batteries with high efficiency. Because when you are a recycler, you cannot honestly sort the battery packs. If it is NMC 111 or NMC 811, you are developing your process based on one or kind of average type of batteries. Probably in the next week, so you will see different batch of batteries. So probably development of kind of a more general circuit for recycling of batteries. For lithium mining and production, probably the major challenge is I mentioned about byproducts. So 3,000 ppm versus 80,000 ppm magnesium. So we have to figure out some way to just we use that magnesium and calcium in the system. Otherwise, they have to allocate a large land for those tailing ponds. So that's not really sustainable. That's about different systems. Also, in terms of mining, we have a lot of different newer technologies like autonomous trucks. You will see some news about using autonomous trucks in the lithium mining industry in Nevada and Australia. So these are the newer kind of current advancement in terms of the mining process in order to reduce the CO2 emission, also increasing the efficiency and also reducing the operational cost in the system. Yeah, this is a kind of very dynamic type of projects for everybody. So and since for example in Nevada, it's a kind of a new industry, clay minerals industry for lithium. You will see a lot of different gaps, a lot of different challenges that we need to provide solution in the next 5 to 10 years. And that is something about, for example, another thing I mentioned in my talk about using carbon capture storage in the lithium industry. When you have leaching process of carbonated ore, if you have good CCU, CCS, carbon capture utilization, carbon capture storage, you can reduce the CO2 emission in your leaching process, and you can have better environmental profile. These are different opportunities for the next 5 to 10 years. And I think lithium mining industry is really, really interested in applying those kind of solutions. It's a very dynamic industry. I really enjoy working with them. And I think that, it's a kind of, industry for future.
Well, that's heartening to hear, Ehsan. Okay, well, that was quite a Q&A, I have to say. There's obviously a lot of interest in this topic, so thank you so much, Ehsan, for not only for your presentation, but also for the Q&A. It was very insightful. Thank you, Ehsan.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay, so then I'm going to very quickly deliver the closing remarks so that we can finish for today. So again, a big thank you to Ehsan for the wonderful presentation. Next fortnight, so sorry, in 2 weeks' time, Thursday week, we'll be joined by Caterina Barbiero and Anna Mazzi from the University of Padova in Italy. They're going to be discussing the life cycle assessment of aluminum, copper, silver, silicon recycling processes from photovoltaic waste. That's Thursday, August 28th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So thank you so much, Ehsan, again for being with us, and thank you to everybody for coming and for participating in the Q&A. And I hope to see you in a couple of weeks' time.
Thank you so much. Bye.